Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I'm Kathy Gruver. And today we are going to talk about communication and being present in communication. Are you listening to me? Did you hear me? What?
I didn't quite get
Hello?
that. What was that again? Hello?
Presence in communication.
Oh, so we have to be present when we're communicating?
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been outside. Most people are not. Now communication and of course presence and mindset and mindfulness and all those, one of those big topics for me. And when I started putting together my communication program, I started looking up all of these, communication tips, and pretty much everything, if you Google what is the top tips for communication, they say listening. And I did a very scientific survey. I asked my friends on Facebook what they thought the most important thing in communication was, and most of them said listening. But that's true, except listening, you have to be there for that. You can't hear if you're not here. If you are daydreaming about something else, if you're sure you know what the person's going to say, so you tune them out. If you're waiting for them to stop talking so you can tell that funny story about the scuba diving trip and the hair, if, whatever it is, if you're not present, if you're not fully there with them, the communication is going to fail. And you also have to be present with yourself. What are you trying to communicate? And so often we just go off on this thing, not actually knowing what the point of the communication is. So clarification, presence, all of that stuff we absolutely need to happen to have effective communication, personally, business-wise, just in life in general. So I thought we'd talk about that today.
Well, yeah, because I think, you bring up an interesting point, because there's a difference. Listening is so important, but there is a difference between listening and hearing. And there's a difference between, hearing, listening, and then what I've usually used in my professional career when we're talking about interviewing or helping people to actually interview others, is active listening.
Yep.
Right. And so again, that kind of mindful communication is more about active listening, which is different than just hearing or kind of listening. Right. So let's talk more about, how we can be more, how can we be more mindful actually in our communications with others?
Yeah, I think you have to really work at that. It is very difficult to stay completely present with someone. And for those of you who are listening and watching, your minds have already wandered like how many times? Every 4 to 6 seconds, our brain pops in and goes, thought, and it's a matter of staying present. Now, the other issue is the more comfortable you are with a person, the more we tend to tune them out. We do this with our spouses. We do this with our kids. We know what they're going to say. And it was very funny. My husband would start to say something and I'd go, yeah. And he'd go,
oh,
what was I going to say? And like, crap, it's like, I actually didn't know. But that was, we just got so used to finishing each other's sentences because we're sure we know what they're going to say. Well, ultimately you don't. So you need to let them finish talking. And if you need clarification, and this to me is one of the biggest things that we are so lacking, is ask questions. Mm-hmm. And I was working with a woman in a company, and she did this whole big project. She did this whole report. She took it to the boss. He read through it and went, make it better. And she went, okay. And she left. And I said, do you know what make it better means? Well, no, but I was afraid to ask. I'm like, well, but then you can't make it better. Like, what does make it better mean? Make it more colorful, make it bigger, make it louder. Like, that's like me saying, hey, Jason, go to the store and get me a shirt.
Okay.
You'd be like, and then me get mad that you didn't get the right one.
Right.
We have to know what we want. We have to communicate that. And if it has not been communicated, you have to say, can you clarify that for me? Or can you give me more information? Or what is this for? Can I get to the root of what you're actually looking for? And I think that's a lot of the times where communication and conscious communication breaks down, is we don't know what we're trying to communicate, and we're not asking enough questions to figure out what the other person needs from us. And that is a huge chasm that we need to bridge, because it's failing. The communication at that point is absolutely failing.
Yeah. Well, because we have to think about, like, the communication loop really goes from kind of the sender through whatever the medium happens to be that you're doing. So, it could be, again, face to face. So you're using body and verbal cues.
Mhm.
But if it's in an email, if it's, on the phone, so then it's only auditory. There's no nonverbal communication that you're seeing from their body language. A lot of times the message gets delivered to the receiver completely different maybe than what we even intended.
Right.
And so it's both important for the sender and the receiver to be doing what they need to be doing, be present, be asking those questions, because it does a couple of things, right? So, again, as I've taught people how to do this over the years in a business environment, asking those clarifying questions, make it better. So, okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you want me to make the report better. What would that look like? Or how would you like me to make the report better?
Right.
So what I did there, and I actually, it's a thing called a callback, where you're actually using the same words the other person is using. That builds rapport with that person.
Yep.
It shows them that you heard what they said because you're using the same words they did. But it also is a clarifying question because you have no idea what the hell does make it better mean, right? Just like, go buy me a shirt. Okay, well, what kind of fabric would you like? What style? Do you want it, knit? You want pullover? You want a button down? Right? So there's lots of clarifying questions that you would need to ask to be able to find out and receive that message properly.
Right. And the other thing that's really important that I've noticed a lot is the communication style of the person that you're communicating with. And, in NLP, we talk about this visual, kinesthetic, and auditory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to be on the phone with someone. I would rather be face to face. I would rather shoot a text because that's visual as opposed to just talking to somebody, So knowing what the best way to deliver that message is for that person can be key. And one of the ways you can key into that is I love watching, so I don't like watching news shows, but I watch CNN when they have the talking pundit people on, and inevitably they start one of two ways. They go, look, I see what you're saying, da da da. So as soon as they say, look, I understand they're a visual learner. Or they go, listen, I hear what you're saying. They give us keys as to how they like to receive and give information. I'm a look, or I think, or do you think, how do you feel about versus how do you think about, what do you think about da da da? So listening to their language. And the other thing that could drive me crazy, I'm a little type A. To me, communication should be, can you come at 3? Yes. That should be the end of the communication to me. I'm very precise. I'm very direct in my communication. I have been on the phone with potential clients who are like, yeah, I kind of want to come in at 3, but I have this doctor's appointment at 2:45 because I found this thing in my hair and I wasn't sure what it is. And so they said I should probably come in. My cousin's sister's aunt had the same thing. And and I'm sitting there going, oh my God,
can you come in at 3?
Can you come in at 3? Yes or no? I don't need to know why you can't come in at 3. I just need to know if you can come in at 3 because I've got 20 other people waiting to come in at 3. I understand when I communicate with that person, I can't be that direct with them. They shut that down. So I have to say something like, hey, I'm so sorry to hear about this hair problem you're having. Would it work better if you come at 3:30 and that way you can go to your doctor and you can get your cousin's aunt's thing? I have to give them a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I had a woman call me yesterday for a speaking gig. I called her back. I said, is this still a good time? She said, yes. So let me tell you about the company. And she just launched straight into, it wasn't, how are you? It wasn't, what's the weather like? It was, and I went, thank God, because that's my communication style too. Mm-hmm. I knew I didn't have to go through the niceties. So now I know that when I send her an email back, literally my email back to her was, thanks for the chat. Let me know if you know any more info.
That's all you have to say.
With a lot of people, they want to hear, hope you're having a great weekend. They want a little more of that stroking before they go into the business. And it's important to know what style that person is. And sometimes you have to adjust to that person's style, be more conscious of that. You need to be the one that observes all that, analyzes all that, and then makes those steps forward to ensure that better communication.
Yeah. So some of you that are listening, because this reminds me too, there's different communication style preference, things like DISC, or if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs,
Yeah.
that's kind of, both of those actually talk about some of the different personality styles and how best to communicate with that person. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So there's kind of a tie-in to something that many of you may already be familiar with, because it's important, as like we said, as the sender, you have a responsibility to try to deliver a message that can be received by the other person. But then as the receiver, we also have to be conscious of the fact that, again, if we understand how the other person operates, we may have to adjust a little bit too, or read more into, what they're trying to say, as well. And so that's, again, why, the thing about active listening, being present, it's looking people in the eye, it's nodding, it's doing those things. It's having body language similar to the other person.
Yep.
There's a thing called rapport, which don't have enough time to get into all that today, but one of the techniques in that, underneath that, is called mirroring, which is where you're actually trying to somewhat mirror the body language of the other person, because it helps them feel comfortable. It helps you feel comfortable, and it opens that communication pathway. It makes it easier, because you're not allowing your nonverbal communications to get in the way of that as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I've heard so many people lecture, and I've seen things about body language, and if the hands are folded, they're closed off. You can't always assume that.
Yeah.
Maybe they're cold. Maybe they're self-conscious about their belly. Maybe I've seen people that kind of keep covered up because they feel like they're heavy in that area and they don't want that, so it's like, you can't always assume things.
Right.
So what I've started doing is I've started actually saying, hey, I'm getting the feeling that this is upsetting you. Am I right on that? And sometimes they go, no, I'm just sitting. Okay, that's good. Because it looked like that's what it was communicating to me. So I just wanted to clarify and make, it's okay to check in and ask people to clarify things. And I think we're so afraid to ask, or we're afraid of the answer.
Yeah,
I'm really pissed at you right now. Oh,
No,
I don't want you to be mad at me. But it's like, we have to know that. We have to know that. And the other thing, as I just said, I've really tried to cut but out of my language. It negates everything before it. I had someone send me an apology the other day, and they're like, I'm so sorry for this. I'm so sorry for that. I'm so sorry for this. But you did. And I went,
screw you.
Should have stopped talking.
Well, because eliminating the but, or one of the techniques that I've used is called reverse your but. Okay, which is, I know you're looking around like, what? How do I do that?
Can I get the 20-year-old one back?
Wouldn't that be great? Okay, yeah. Can I get my 20-year-old a lot of things back, right? But no, with reverse your buts, what ends up happening is sometimes you have to deliver a message that may not be pleasing to the other person. Okay, I mean, I've grown up being an auditor, and a lot of times you have to tell people things they don't want to hear. Yeah. Okay, so what reversing your but does is it changes the order of the sentence. So most people would say something like, Kathy, I really appreciate you getting that report in on time, but you need to make these other changes to it because it was really poor in this particular area, right? Because but is at the end of the sentence, it negates that good thing that I just told you about. Reversing your buts means you turn it around. So instead I would say, Kathy, on the report, you could have, I need you to go back and do this, this, and this to improve it. But I'm really happy with the work that you've done. Yeah, see the difference? So you're leaving him at the end on a better feeling. So either remove the word but or reverse your but, and that'll also help you in your communications, especially if you have to deliver a message that is hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. I actually hadn't heard that before. And I agree with you. And one of the things I think that we need to do more of is that praise. I remember when I was an actor, we'd sit down at the end of rehearsal and the director would give us all notes. And I had co-directed a play with a friend of mine, and he would go through every negative note. You missed this line, you missed that beat, we need that to be bigger, da 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 da. And then it would be my turn, and I would go through and I would praise something every single person did. hey, man, you nailed that line that we gave you last time. So good job on that. Hey, I love that hand gesture you did, that really anchored that in, and da 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 da. And I remember at one point he said, I'm so glad you're here, because we're like good director, bad director.
It's
And
like good cop, bad cop.
Right. And I said, but you have to praise. I said, people can only hear so much criticism without praise before they shut it all out.
Yeah.
So I love that you're starting with the negative thing, and then, I'm really proud of what you did. You need to work on those couple beats, but the rest of it was so awesome. I love what you did with. So I agree in delivering that kind of bad news or that criticism, to add something positive in there to make it a balanced message, as opposed to you're an idiot. It's like, yeah. So that's awesome. I love that technique.
Yeah, because you're still delivering the message you need to, but you're leaving it, with on a better note. Because again, most of the time, and and maybe this kind of goes back to our theme today too, right? Is that, when you're communicating with others, if you're always communicating about negative things, or if you're always, getting on somebody about, you need to do this better, it really pisses me off when you do this, I hate it when you do that. It has to be balanced, right? I mean, you have to deliver the message in a nice way, but you need to show even more of the praise. And I can't remember it depends on your relationship, because I read some research on this too, as far as the relationship between good and bad messages that you have in a relationship. And for some, it's like you have to give 10 good things for every one bad thing, or else you end up, really damaging that relationship for the long term. And so it depends. Like I said, I think it ranged, if I remember right, kind of like 3-2 to maybe 10-1 sort of ratio. But we need to be balanced more too in praising and communicating those things that we're grateful for or that we appreciate about the other person, way more than the negative stuff. And I know in a business environment, I get a lot of people that say, well, I'm not going to tell them if they're doing a good job or if they're doing what I expect them to do, because that's what I pay them for. And it's like, well, then you're a stupid boss, because your people are not going to, appreciate you or feel validated by you. And so you need to actually say it, communicate that to people, but do it in an authentic way when you're there present with them.
Well, and why would you continue to perform if it's not being acknowledged? Because at some point you go, well, shit, I'm doing a great job and he's not even noticing. I'm going to do it half-assed from now on because it doesn't seem to matter. You start to lose that momentum, and unless you have a work ethic that doesn't allow you to do that. And I certainly, I know a lot of people that are like that as well. They're going to do the best thing they can, no matter if anybody acknowledges it. But it's really nice to have that feedback. And when we did our show on gratitude, we talked about that, of praising your employees and doing call outs to people that did a good job or helped you in some way. And I think we have to do that. It's that lifting people up, because to keep people down, a part of you has to be down there with them, keeping them pinned down. So lifting people up lifts everybody up. And in that conscious communication, the more elevated that conversation can be, the better the communication is going to be, the better the contact is going to be. And especially if you're in sales or negotiations or things like that, that's going to be better as well. You're going to get more wins if you go about the communication in a conscious way.
Yeah, because the better you communicate, the deeper the relationship you're going to make with that other person. And so again, like you said, if this is in business and you've got a boss subordinate kind of relationship, the better you can make that relationship, the more potential you unlock as the boss, but also the person who's a subordinate does as well, right? Yeah. I mean, because there's kind of that difference of the carrot and stick too. You can beat somebody, and as long as you're beating them, they'll probably perform.
Right.
But if you can train them or give them the carrot, and they love you authentically for who you are, they will literally die for you.
Yeah.
You can't get any more potential out of that person. They're going to give you everything they have if you develop that kind of relationship. But you have to have good communication in order to develop that relationship.
Yeah. Knowing what you want, knowing how best to communicate it to that person, and then clarifying things once you get that communication back. I mean, it's not easy, but it's simple. I mean, it's a simple formula. There's an exercise that I've done in communication things where it's like I have everybody turn to a partner, hand them a coin, just pick a coin out of your pocket and hand it to them. Now, did anybody notice if that was heads or tails before you gave it to them? Do you know what you're giving to them? Or did you just randomly hand them something? And we do that so often with communication. We just kind of go, blah, not really knowing what we're offering, not knowing what we're giving and what we want in return. And so just that presence, that communication awareness of what are we actually delivering. And sometimes our tone gets away from us. We say things in such a way that other people interpret the tone. Hey, are you done with that box? Why, do you need it? Or what, I'm leaving my stuff around. You know, there's this misinterpretation of tone, which leads to conflict. And I have yet to figure out how to master that, because people interpret things in ways, especially with emails now, they put tones on these things. How do we get around this misinterpretation? Do you have any insight on this whole miscommunication thing?
Well, it's interesting because it's hard, and it depends on the communication pathway that you're using. Because obviously, I'm going to get the numbers wrong, but I think it was somewhere between 7 and 12% of what's actually communicated is verbal, right? The vast majority of how we're communicating is actually our nonverbal cues. And so again, it's not just what you're saying, but it's also how you're looking. And I know I'm guilty of this all the time, I'm sure, because somebody will say something, and I know I don't have a poker face. Okay. So sometimes I'm sure that I look, or, you know, my body language shows something.
You did roll your eyes at me earlier.
Did I? Oh my gosh, really? That we have to be conscious of that as well, because especially like you said, in certain things like, you know, a text or voicemail or some of the other stuff, the person can't see our body language. And so the tone of our voice, you know, other things like that can make a difference. If we happen to be very sarcastic in our personality, sometimes that sarcasm that we think is funny may get misinterpreted by the other person, and they're just pissed off. They're like, you know, what a dick. Why did you say that? And it's like, dude, I was kidding, right? In person, you could actually, you know, express that, because your body language is going to show you're sarcastic. But when you leave a message, you know, that's not going to come through. So you do have to be conscious about that. Actually, this week there was a debate online that I was looking at, or kind of a post on LinkedIn about emoticons coming into, you know, all of the different things. And I like to use them.
Yeah, I do too.
Usually it's a smiley face, because I just want people to smile. But you know, that adds a little different dimension to it, so that then people can maybe see if you're sarcastic. But again, just be conscious, be mindful of the communication, you know, medium that you're using, and what may be appropriate or what may not be appropriate.
Right.
And especially in multicultural, you know, I deal with a lot of people internationally where English is not their first language. And so again, you have to be very, very careful in just kind of how you're communicating. Ask a lot more questions, you know, because I remember one email that I was responding to, it was somebody that sent me a message. And when I read the message, the literal meaning of that, I'm sure, was not what he was meaning. Right. And so the first thing I had to do was respond back and say, I don't quite understand what you're saying. What did you mean to say? Because I don't think what you said is what you meant to say. And it was just a language issue. He used, you know, he translated some of the words incorrectly. And it's no different than, this one popped into my head when I was living in Germany, right? In America, when you're eating dinner with somebody and you're full, right? You say, you know, they offer you more and you say, no, thanks, I'm full. And so, you know, I was new to German language. So I was eating dinner at someone's house and they said, you know, would you like more? And I said, nein, ich bin voll, which means, no, thank you, I am full. And everyone around the table started laughing. Right. And so obviously I knew I had done something wrong, you know, and the mother said, oh, Jason, we don't say that here. We say, I am satisfied, or ich bin satt, right? It has a different meaning in German. That means I'm no longer hungry. And they're like, saying ich bin voll means I am pregnant in German. Right? And so, you know, again, that was one of those examples of a lost in translation, kind of a thing. And even if we're not speaking a different language, sometimes our communication can get lost in translation.
Right.
If we're not careful. And again, I made a mistake. I never said "Ich bin voll" again at the end of dinner with someone in Germany.
Right.
Because you learn, and now you move on. So it's the same thing again. If you're having communications, maybe it's not working with one person. Learn and figure it out. Don't make the same mistakes again.
Right.
And just be more mindful in trying to communicate the message.
Yeah. And it's really important to know your audience. And I tend to joke, I love to do pattern interrupts where I say something that's completely sarcastic or off the chain and to make people go, wait, what? So usually when I go to my doctor's appointments and things like that, they're like, do you smoke? And I go, no. Oh, I mean, well, crack. But, I can stop whenever I want. And they tend, they kind of go, what? And then they laugh at me because they look at me. Okay, clearly I'm not smoking crack. It's not a thing I do. And I went in for my surgery. Gosh, what was I having? I think it was my hysterectomy, and I sat down with this very stern, the glasses and the unfortunate hair, and I mean just this woman that was just so like
serious.
And, she's like, "Are you being abused? Are you doing?" She was through all these questions, and she goes, "Do you smoke?" And I said, "No." "Well, crack." And she goes, "Okay, smokes crack." And she goes, and I went, no, I'm kidding. And she goes, "Well, then why'd you say it?"
I was trying to be funny.
Like, okay, no pattern interrupt. No, I mean, like she was like not having any of that. So I went, okay, know your audience. It could have been funny. It wasn't. I had to explain so somewhere in my medical record, apparently I'm addicted to crack. I don't know how that's going to turn out later, but it's like, you have to know your audience, and you have to know when is that time to be funny or to drop that F-bomb or to, and that takes a comfort with people. Now I'm never going to see this woman again. It was not some big catastrophe, but if I'm on stage and I say something like that, the last talk I did, I actually brought in a photo of the founder of the company as a joke. And I took him aside ahead of time and I said, look, can I use a photo of you from last night from the slumber party? I'm going to kind of make a joke about you. He goes, yeah, absolutely. He loved it. But I would not have done that without asking him.
Right.
So it's important to have that communication, that permission of, especially with joking around. And so I know so many people watching are speakers or do that kind of work. You want to make sure you know your boundaries. Yeah. And sometimes, I'm with you. I have a terrible poker face. People say something and I'm like, it's like, this does things.
What? Your face just reacts?
My face does things. And I am an eye roller. I am constantly using the eye roll emoji because I would be rolling my eyes in person. So just be kind of aware what your face does. I mean, I know sometimes it's hard to control because it's such an automatic thing.
Yep.
We could be better at that. We could be better at that. So yeah. All right. So we've communicated. Everyone's listened. It was beautiful.
Hopefully, as long as they've stayed on and we're actively listening throughout, then hopefully they got something out of this one, right? So.
And or if they faded away for a second, they brought it back, which is what we have to do. Our mind's going to wander. It's just a matter of bringing it back. So that's the key with that.
It does. So, all right, everybody, go out there and be more mindful in your communication, right? Think more about the message that you're sending, how you're sending it, how it could be received by the other person. Ask those follow-up questions, use good body language, show people that you're actually listening to what they're saying. And it's going to end up strengthening your relationships. Actually reduces stress too, right? Because again, the more questions you get answered, the less stress you have to feel. Like we were talking about that lady at the beginning, make it better. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? But she asked some clarifying questions. Now she understands, and she doesn't have to go away and think, oh, what am I going to do, right? And she's probably stressed out for the next couple of days.
Right.
So the better we get at communicating, the better we're going to have relationships, less stress we're going to have, and it just feels good.
Yeah,
right?
And more success in our business and our personal relationships and sales and marketing, and everything is communication. Everything is communication. So the better we are at it, the better we'll be at everything else. That potential will just open up.
Come out. Fireworks.
I'm going to put that song in there now.
I know. Well,
I don't think we have a license for that.
Okay. Anyway. All right. So go out there, communicate. If you make a mistake, fix it. Do better as you go forward and unlock your potential and have a great day. I'm Jason Mefford, and thanks for listening. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com.
And I'm Kathy Gruver, and I could be listening. What can I be? I could be listening. Yeah, that was conscious. I can be reached. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at kathygruver.com. Go forth, communicate, choose your words carefully. Don't tell people you smoke crack. And we'll catch you for our next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast.
All right. See you later.